All right, Natasha, we are back for episode, what is this, 8 now?
Is it 6? Is it 7? Or is it 8? I don't know.
Yeah,
I
I
know
think I
that.
think I think it's 8 at this point.
Okay.
I I want to say thank you first off and foremost to LinkedIn for giving us the platform.
Thank
You
you.
guys have been an amazing partner. Thank you to the team at CAD Management, and thank you obviously to your team at Austere for designing and making this all look so pretty. Um,
Awesome. Thank
we
you.
we have an amazing panel today to talk about independent venues versus COVID. This is part 2. For those of you who have been following us, we did a part 1 where we had SOB's founder Larry Gold, definitely an icon in the independent scene, and then we had Ari from Mastrio, which is the technology company that built out a lot of the back end for live streams, and Jackson from Pianos as well. So we had an amazing panel then, and we were asked to do a part 2 because this is a very, very important topic.
Yeah.
So Natasha, can you give us a little background on who we have on today, and we'll bring them in to the stream?
Whew, putting me on the spot, my dude. Maybe you should tackle because I have to pull up my notes.
Oh yeah, sure. So we got Jon Ostrow. He's the chief research officer at Bandsintown.
Yes.
We got Steven Matrick. He is the head talent buyer at Lola. We got Patrick Wilson, who is the head of artist relations at the National Independent Venue Association. And then we got Justin Kantor, who's the co-founder of the Poisson Rouge in New York City. So let's bring him in. And hold on. All right. Hey guys. How you doing?
Hello. Hey.
Great.
Awesome.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining us. This is an exciting group of individuals here coming from, different parts of the country, different backgrounds. So why don't we just kind of start off with some background? I mean, Jon, why don't you give us a little background on what you guys do over at Bandsintown and some of the work you guys have been doing?
Sure. Hopefully you all know about us. Bandsintown is the largest concert discovery platform. We've got 58 million registered users on the fan side, and about 580,000 registered users on the artist side, connecting the dots to the platform. Obviously, a huge part of what we do is discovery around physical events and live events. So when COVID became a reality for the industry, we made a very quick shift to live streaming as the main focus for the platform. Obviously, the scale that we are seeing from live streaming events is not the same as what you would expect from a physical event. You're talking about in the tens of thousands versus the hundreds of thousands of events per month. But it's been a really interesting trend that we've seen, just artists globally that are starting to really adopt live streaming, and it's really becoming sort of its mainstream moment. Just so many platforms that are out there that are either popping up or have been around for quite a while, and this is their moment to shine. And it's been a really, really interesting opportunity for us to leverage, not only the fan and the artist relationships that we have, but just the platform and the scale that we can bring, both with our owned media as well as the ad platform that we run, to just make sure that these fans can still rely on getting information from us about live streaming events around the world.
Absolutely. Steven, why don't you give us a little background on yourself and Lola?
I'm Steven Matrick. I am the music programmer at Lola. We are a 175 cap venue in the East Village on 11th and A. And we are now progressing toward having live streams inside the venue for bands to actually play as a full band, hopefully as socially distanced as possible. And that's something we're exploring. I also am a co-founder of the new Colossus Festival. We had our second edition. We snuck it in on March 11th through 15th of this year. And we're doing weekly streams on Fridays at 5 p.m., where the artist is interviewed by Brad Wagner, who recently left Pace Magazine. And I'm also have my own artist management company. I manage A Place to Bury Strangers, Paul Jacobs, and Luke DeCizio.
Great. And Patrick, why don't you jump in?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for having me. So I'm a talent buyer at White Eagle Hall in Jersey City, New Jersey. It's an 800 cap room. And more recently, in the last couple of months, have been heading up artist relations for National Independent Venue Association, which you'll meet Justin, who's also, he's on the board there. We've had, we're just trying to change a tire, going down the freeway at 90. And we've had some really great artist help. We've had some stuff that's coming in right now that I will be able to share during this Zoom that we're really excited about. And yeah, that's all.
Excellent. Justin.
Hi, I'm Justin Kantor. I co-founded a music venue in New York City in Greenwich Village, actually 12 years ago to the day on June 15th. So we had our 12-year COVID closure, I guess being closed anniversary. And my background before that was classical music. And, I was a cellist and was a 29-year-old who had this idea that we should present classical music in a club, and that really sort of evolved into what became LPR. And so yeah, it was going strong until COVID. I at the same time with a few other venue owners around the country helped found the NIVA, National Independent Venue Association, as a response to the crisis, and Patrick will speak to this also. But there was just an immense amount of venues coalescing around this cause in order to amplify our voice and share the challenges that we collectively have as being the first to close and definitely the last to open, hopefully. And I also have a platform that I've been developing over the past couple of years to empower independent music venues called Venue Pilot, a technology platform. That's mine.
Very cool.
Excellent.
So would love to jump into kind of our first question. This was a really popular one last time. And, we've all been seeing what, COVID's been doing to venues when it comes to closing, and also just trying to refigure out how, people can get more creative about still creating, show experiences for fans, because we're all still craving going to shows. So obviously we've seen the drive-in show experience. I know that that's been something that's been trying to make up for some of the lost sales and stadium tours and things like that. What have you guys been seeing that you guys are trying to implement as unique alternatives to, doing shows, or, not on the digital front, but on a still physical experience? What are you guys seeing? What are you guys thinking is best that you guys are trying to put into place? We'll start with Jon for Bandsintown.
Admittedly, we do mostly digital on our end, but I mean, certainly we've seen quite a few different ways that promoters and venues and artists are trying to get back out there and doing some things with physical events. I mean, I'll speak to one that I've seen most recently pop up that I think was really interesting, because it sort of bridges the gap between physical and digital. I don't know if you guys have seen this. Garth Brooks announced a rather large event. Basically, it's a live streamed event broadcast to drive-in movie theaters, and I think it's over 100 something theaters. I don't know the exact number, so I apologize if I'm misquoting. But I think that's pretty interesting, because it's the drive-in theater concept, I think, is interesting to get the actual artist there and continue the actual live experience, but the ability to leverage the full scope of digital and to be able to reach via broadcast as many fans as you can through all these drive-ins, I think is a pretty unique concept.
Yeah, no, it is. It definitely is. I would love to hear what you have to say, Steven. What are your thoughts? What are you guys doing or seeing?
Well, we're talking about opening up the front of the venue to have obviously more room to social distance, but also it would actually even be safer. It would make it more of an outdoor venue, at least this fall, and have a limited capacity, still feel like a show. I think that's the biggest challenge.
Absolutely, absolutely. Patrick, thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, again, we're not at a point in Jersey City that we're opening or doing any sort of bringing the staff in yet. I will say that there's a cool concept that one of our NIVA members is working on. My old boss is a gentleman, Jake Samuels, who books a couple of great rooms in Chicago. One is called Space in Evanston, and then Thalia Hall down in Pilsen, Southside Chicago. And he has been, for the last few weeks, been doing like to-go concerts. So he sort of put it out as a feeler to his customers. Hey, I've got such and such artists, and we will, for, I don't know what the price was, maybe $300-500. We'll bring it with one crew, plug and play. We'll bring you some pizzas from our restaurant. We'll bring you some beer. Invite your neighbors and stuff, socially distance. And they, talking to him about it, they did it, and they had, I think they sold like 25 of these in the first weekend, and so they're expanding to a number of other artists. People are loving it. Thought that was a cool idea.
So is that like them basically coming to a neighborhood and doing it on the street, like a cul-de-sac party type of thing?
I think the first one they did was, what some of their they have a really strong fan base in Evanston at this club. It's a 300 cap room called Space. And the first one was a gentleman. I can't remember who the artist was at the moment, but yeah, someone bought it. They brought him, they put it in their front yard. They invited neighbors. They brought, speaker system and an engineer, and he plugged and did a 90-minute set, and it seemed pretty awesome.
Interesting. Yeah, no, that's I haven't heard anything like that yet, but I'm not surprised that it's kind of gone in that direction. Justin, I'd love to hear any of your thoughts too.
While I find myself as the entrepreneurial type, I opened up a music venue to present live music. I'm not really excited that much about. There are these other opportunities, and venues are doing whatever they can to try to make things work before we're able to open at a decent capacity. I mean, even 75% capacity is not viable for a lot of spaces. But I think the streaming solutions and creative ideas are great, but it's really a Band-Aid that's not going to be enough to sustain these independent venues through this crisis, unless there's some support from the community and government. Sorry for the naysay. But
No, yeah. Hey, I mean, the whole point of this is for us to hear kind of from everyone's perspective. We are all in similar circles, but the buzz is very much varied across the board. So it's nice to, as peers, hear from each other. What is everyone thinking? What is everyone doing? And how can we as a collective, industry figure out ways to move forward, or at least be adjacently moving forward towards solutions? Because, I mean, we can't all just stay closed, and we can't all just try and find alternative solutions that may not be as safe as others. But we have to continue moving forward. That's the whole point of Fast Forward. So, yeah, Clay, anything you want to bring up before we move on?
Yeah. So, I mean, in terms of your point, obviously every venue doesn't necessarily want to, do any of these kind of alternatives, but there has been, I've seen some positives in terms of scalability, particularly around live streaming. I mean, I'm just looking at the numbers. BTS did their Bang Bang Con, the live, which I guess took place this past week. And apparently they reached a peak of 756,000 concurrent viewers in 107 countries and territories, which is the equivalent of 50,000 seat stadiums. And a lot of people in the digital world and in the in the platform world are kind of using that as a possibility for how far this can go from a scalability wise. I mean, I even go as far to say, what Travis Scott did with Fortnite was incredible as well. I think he had about 20 to 30 million people tune in there for that collaboration and that live stream within the gaming world. So I guess my question to the collective group here is, if venues can't really return to full capacity, let's say for 12 to 18, maybe 24 months, which is what Live Nation said, I guess, on their latest earnings call, do you guys look at live streaming as something that you guys need, that it is no longer a option to incorporate in your shows? And if it is or it isn't, I'm kind of curious to hear what you guys think about live streaming and the possibility of it, really helping you guys offset the potential financial cost of lost capacity in a business where margins may not be as large as some may assume. So, John, I'll definitely start with you, because Bandsintown, like we were talking about, moved all of their shows into digital within 30 plus days or something, and now you guys are doing thousands and thousands of hours of live stream content. So, John, we'd love to get your first take here.
Yeah, I think it's hard, and to Justin's point, I think that where we see a real opportunity for live streaming is definitely to support and to mitigate the revenues lost on the artist side. I think it's certainly a harder conversation around the independent venue side. So I don't want to overstep and misspeak when you've got great people on the panel to speak directly from a venue perspective. I mean, with regard to just live streaming in general, I do think that there's a unique opportunity there. I think it's still in its sort of nascence, and it's but the adoption that we've seen around it. I was just trying to pull up to see what we've seen so far. I mean, from a Bandsintown concerts perspective, with the event listings, we've seen since the end of March, 31,000 live streaming events added to the platform from just under 11,000 artists. So there's clearly an adoption happening from artists, and there are many platforms that are being utilized. Obviously, Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Instagram being the big ones, but there's a lot of them that are starting to crop up. I think right now it's still, like I said, in its nascence. There are artists that are trying to figure out how to do it. There are a lot of companies that are trying to get behind artists and help them to monetize, Bandsintown being one of them. That's a big focus for us right now, is how do we support artists to actually monetize these initiatives better. I think, frankly, it's probably not, advertising revenue is probably not the format to drive monetization for live streaming. It could be a small piece of it, but I think that where you'll start seeing more revenue coming in is engagement focused sponsorships. I think would be really interesting, and then VIP experiences and merch. So again, I'm not exactly sure, and I don't want to speak on behalf of venues as to how that's going to play in, because I think it's a very siloed challenge that the artists face and what they can do to engage their fan base versus what a venue can do. To Justin's point, at 75% capacity, what can you actually do with live streaming? But I do think that an economy will start to build around ways to monetize live streaming in the next 6 months or so. Even as events start to come back, I do see there being ways that venues will be able to leverage it in the long term.
I mean, Steven, you like you said, you guys are operating about 175 cap venue, and where does live streaming play for you in your mind in terms of the future and how you may integrate it or not integrate it? Or
well, the owners told me they're going to put in a 3-camera setup that's going to be permanent, so that won't go away once the venue reopens, even at half capacity. I think the issue really is, do people want to pay $5 to $10 for a live stream? Are they going to support this financially? And the new Colossus streams are all free. We have 30 to 80 people every Friday, but we don't really know what those numbers would be if we were charging a cover. And so really, we're all just going to have to try this out and see how it goes.
I will say on that point, something that has come up with live streaming that I've started to see that's pretty interesting is the idea of geofencing live streams. So, certain artists, Steven, as you said, a lot of these live streams are free, and that has definitely become the standard. Some artists are trying to get fans to pay for them. There's a lot of ticketing platforms that are now supporting live streaming events, paid live streaming events. And with more or less success happening from them, depending on the size of the artist, the scale of their fan base. But the ones that I've seen that have worked particularly well in the last month or so have been the ones that are actually geofencing the event to specific locations, so that they're actually setting up essentially a digital tour and only promoting it to fans in a specific city and making it really about that city, just as it would be if they were touring in that specific city. So I think that there could be really interesting ways to leverage that from a venue perspective. How you continue to engage and be a presence in the local community, just through digital means.
So Patrick, what are your NIVA representatives and members kind of thinking about live streaming in terms of their operations model?
Yeah, I think, and Justin can also speak to this. I think it's at the front of everyone's mind, and we are seeing all different versions of it. I would say, sort of to what Steven was saying, I think we're still at a nascent part where we don't know if there is a law of diminishing returns here, which there used to be for the longest time with live streams. I talked about doing every venue I've ever worked at. We talked about, when are we going to get into live streaming? The numbers just never worked. Artists didn't feel like they should, give us a cut on live stream, and that's fine. Now it's very different. I think I think two things we'll start to see, and to amplify the live stream, is we're going to start to see artists go back to venues to live stream. Right now we're seeing mostly living room stuff. Every once in a while we're having, iHeartRadio has been doing this living room thing, but they also had Katy Perry and her band go to Hotel Cafe. So I think we'll start to see that very soon as venues feel comfortable enough to let people back in and get some staff in there. And the other thing, I think someone mentioned it, is all the platforms coming up that include VIP meet and greets, digital VIP meet and greets. Will be a big thing, especially in the comedy world, where comedy's always been worried about any sort of live stream, right? Lock up your phone when you come in. Now that, the comedy world has to be in front of an audience, really, I think, more than music. That's the only way they can test stuff out. So I think we'll start to see more and more comedians going into rooms that are at super low capacity, but then adding on a stream service to it, or a VIP meet and greet to that, to get extra money, because, hey, they're in front of an audience, so they get the laughs, but it's not a big enough audience for them to make enough money off of it. So let's add some live stream capabilities.
Justin, your venue in New York is pretty big, decent size, not small, but medium size. But curious to get your thoughts on, if you guys are looking into live streaming, is that going to be something that you are going to incorporate? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, as Patrick probably in the same line as what Patrick is thinking, we've been exploring live streaming for quite a while. We worked with, before livestream.com was acquired by Vimeo, we had a partnership with them, and we did some really cool shows. I think Nora Jones was one, and also I'm blanking on that name. But and the idea was always to try to figure out how to monetize that, and at the time it really didn't work out to actually charge for the stream. So I think going forward, there seems like there's going to be an opportunity to start monetizing, and that being another alternative revenue source. But yeah, we have the technology, the cameras, the 1080 HD cameras, and many of our shows we do stream. We had been streaming, so. but since COVID, we haven't really found a way to do any live streams yet there. But that might change. But yeah, what I was saying is just I think it could be one piece of many that, you know, going forward could be additional revenue streams for the venue. But I don't think it's practical to think that it can really sort of become like a primary generator of income for venues.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting to hear, but you know, we want to. Natasha wants to jump in.
I do. I'm trying to find my question. I'm sorry, I cannot find the question that I'm trying to look for. Clay.
I have a question that would be something I'm curious about actually right now in terms of trying to understand the value of doing live streams, and maybe this is, you know, John, maybe you'll have an answer for this, but there's the sort of donation model and also the paywall model, and then just like totally free. If in terms of monetization, I don't know if there's been any trends in terms of donation model maybe actually even being a little bit more generating more income than the actual paywall model. So I know venues are trying to just kind of A/B test a lot of this stuff now and try to figure out what's the best way to do this.
Yeah, I don't know of any like specific trends that I could speak to, but definitely I've certainly seen many more events leverage tipping to monetize the events than have, you know, tried to actually hard ticket the event. You know, I think it makes a lot of sense to me, right? Because just the fact that live streaming has been essentially a free thing forever, that it makes sense that you know, fans are sort of paying what they want in essence through tipping to support the artists rather than paying a hard set amount. The other side of it too is that I think, you know, artists and the industry are struggling to figure out what should the price be for the event. There's no real sort of standardized price point right now for, you know, an artist sitting in their living room or in their bedroom performing, and especially, you know, if it's a pared down version of a band, because it's not all that terribly easy for every genre of music to be well represented through a live stream. You know, I think it's definitely still being figured out.
And look, I mean, I actually had a conversation with the CEO. I'm not sure if you guys have seen B-App yet, but they've had DJ Khaled and a couple of these other big artists on there. And the CEO gave me this phenomenal stat that said that for every 100 concurrent viewers that they get on their app, that about 40% of them move into like converting on merch, like literally going into the merch site and looking at merch. So I think that there's an opportunity to do a lot with the merch side. I mean, I'm hearing that a lot of fashion brands are looking to do a lot more like mass collaborations and like really think about how they can bring the digital and kind of maybe do some sort of package with Amazon or something that you could bring it into the home. So I'm hearing a lot of different fascinating things, but I want to go back to the business model for a second too. 90%, this is coming from NIVA here, 90% of independent venues are saying that they may go out of business post-COVID, given the economy and the venue shut down. You know, Patrick, maybe we could have you jump in here first, and then we'll go to Justin and go around. But can you kind of give us some insight into that study? What are the things that venues are most concerned about outside of, you know, obviously financial troubles, and what does their recovery model kind of look like? I guess from some of those numbers that you were able to pull that got a lot of coverage in NPR and other places.
Yeah, and I'm totally happy to talk about it. I think Justin should talk about it first, since Justin is heading up all of our research and stuff. And was
great. Yeah, Justin, please jump in.
Don't mean to push you into that, Justin. But.
Oh yeah, no, that's that survey, that was a survey that went out to our, that was maybe about a month ago at this point. So that was a survey that went out to our members, and we had a really strong response rate. Based on it, I'd say it's probably about 5% deviation from if you were to just sort of apply it across the board to all venues. But the problem is this: the venues don't have any money coming in. A majority of their staff is furloughed, and the primary financial burden is the rent or the mortgage. And in a lot of cases, with a lot of venues, they already don't have enough cash. If they had to pay their landlords for the rent that hasn't been paid yet, they wouldn't be able to. So what's happening now is there's with many places is there's a pause that, you know, at any point the landlords could come after them for their full rent and shut down the businesses. And you know, so it's like legit. It's a scary time for a lot of operators. Yeah.
So can I ask you, are operators more, and I'm sure there's not necessarily one that's more or the other, but are they more concerned about the long-term economic effects of 40 plus million people being unemployed and not having the same amount of disposable income to go in and pay for tickets relative to not being able to open? Because I see signs of life of them being able to open doors. From my perspective, I would have to imagine that there's a short-term problem, but then there's a 10-year problem of people not having the same type of money they had when the economy was really booming and the unemployment rate was at a historical low of 3.5%. So I'm kind of curious to, you know, either of you from the NIVA side, even Steven, you know, any of you, please jump in here. You know, I'm kind of curious. Maybe it's like a two-pronged thing, like short-term versus long-term, but if any of you have thoughts.
I'd be very happy to have the long-term problem right now. If the short-term problem, we need to make sure we can open up again, period. LPR opened up in 2008. We started our business at during that crisis, the financial crisis of that time, and we were able to make it through that. And many other businesses and venues were. Venues are hardy. The businesses are tough businesses, but they're actually really hardy. Like, there's plenty of members on our in NIVA that are over 20 years, been around for over 20 years. One venue is over 100 years old. So there is definitely staying power, but it's really tight margins, and it takes a lot of chutzpah, to keep this stuff going. And this is just a situation that is it's out of our hands as venue operators. We're closed. We're not going to open up until it's safe to open up. And once we're able to do that, it's going to be a different story. I think we'll be able to figure it out. But until that point, we can't sustain ourselves for 6 months without any sort of income coming.
Yeah, that's true. Something that we did discuss a lot in our last venue panel was that, the perception of ticket sales cures all is not actually the reality for venues. It's really, drinks and food is what really gets, profits going at venues. So do you see there being some sort of transitionary period where even though shows are not as fully packed, maybe it's more of a spread out experience where you're setting up more tables and you're allowing people to kind of, enjoy a live show, but everyone has their own private little sections where they're sitting, and you're treating it more as like a dine and entertainment type of thing, not like full dine, but you know what I mean, where maybe instead of treating it like a traditional venue, you kind of refocus more on entertainment in the sense of drinking and sitting and in kind of space, forcing the spaces to exist around each other as you reopen.
Yeah, I'll jump in. I mean, I'll say, sure, venues are going to have to, some venues are going to do that and turn to the City Winery model. The problem is that City Winery built that model including what their current overhead is. And now we're talking about rooms that have never done that before, have the same overhead as they would. My room goes, we're at 800 cap, and, seated with cabaret tables spread out probably gets us down to, 125 maybe. That will happen, and we'll figure something like that out, but that's not sustainable. It's, and as Justin says, look, the 90% thing, and let's be clear, the 90% was done, as he said, 6 weeks ago or something. And we're talking 6 months from when the shutdown happened in March. So now we're at month 3. So we're talking the 90% could come up in the next 3 months, could be shut down forever. So I don't think a ton of us, I can't speak for 2,000 of us, but I don't think the first thing in everyone's mind is, are people going to want to come spend money in a year? Or I think it's how do we stay open so they can come, and deals are going to have to change, and we're not going to be doing as many guarantees, and artists will have to be, they'll have to put their neck out a little more, unfortunately. But yeah.
I mean, Steven, please jump in here.
Yeah, I think something is going to happen politically, because you walk down Orchard Street and you see that half the street's always been empty. And I've spoken to real estate people about this, and landlords get tax cuts for having empty spaces. So they don't really have an incentive to try and keep the music scene alive, because they can just write off the empty spaces rent off their taxes. So that needs to change. And people are going to have to decide that they would prefer to go out night after night to see bands and spend money at bars rather than watch Netflix. And that was already a problem before all of this happened.
Jon, I mean, you guys move so many tickets for so many venues across the country. What is your prediction in terms of, getting back to the historical highs of tickets being moved, and just from a financial side, are there any trends that you're seeing that I guess short term, maybe either positive news for venues to hear, anything just on your side, because you guys have so much data from almost every country, every territory around the world. But please.
Yeah, I mean, the only real positive that we're seeing, unfortunately, I wish there were more positives to talk about right now, but we are seeing that countries that, outside of the U.S. that were hit less, some smaller countries, are coming back quicker than expected. Like, for instance, New Zealand, obviously small country, but they are coming back already with no caps to the venues. So they're just coming back full force. I don't think that's happening anytime soon in the U.S. So I don't know if there's a whole lot of positives to talk through, and frankly, there's not a whole lot of trends to talk about because there's no events happening.
So do you guys see from all of your data that you guys have collected as a whole that the recovery is U-shaped, W-shaped, or V-shaped? I'm kind of curious to get your thoughts on the recovery type that venue owners and artists should expect.
I wish I could say. I really do. I don't know if I have the answer for that. I mean, I think that I really don't know. I mean, it's a lot of it is sort of yet to be seen what the just sort of consumption habits are going to be like of people. I mean, you can see already when some people, when some cities are starting to open back up, or some states are starting to open back up, and just sort of be a little slightly flexible on the policies that they have at the state level for opening up, cities or beaches or whatever, that people are flocking to them. So, on the one hand, you could say that it's sort of like people are just ready to get back and so desperate to get back to that they're going to be willing to take some level of risk, which we all sort of on a human level are all sort of getting used to the idea that at least until January or whenever they're able to get a vaccine going, that we're most likely going to have to just live with some level of risk that we're willing to take. you know, on the other hand, you know, you could say that, you know, the regulations are just going to be in place longer than people are willing to go see these shows, and it's not going to be possible for venues to open up, even if fans are willing to you know, take on that risk. So it's going to be hard to say. I mean, I think to Steven's point, a lot of this comes down to the politics and you know, getting the support at the government level to you know, have the right procedures to make it safe, but then actually to allow these venues to open back up.
Do you and anybody on the bottom, Justin, you know, Patrick or Steven, do you think that the government needs to step in here and give a fiscal bailout to independent venues specifically, because they've been doing it for the airline industry, they've been doing it for, like, you know, small businesses? Like, what are you guys, I guess, hearing on that level? You know, do you think that there needs to be extra lines in maybe the next PPP package? Curious to get your thoughts on the fiscal side and what the government should or should not do for venues to help, you know, you guys kind of extend that period that you were talking about.
Yeah, I mean, yes, that's been, you know, NIVA's, you know, not sole but primary mission. You know, we have a lobbyist team. We've been, you know, everyone in NIVA has been lobbying their individual senators and congresspeople. The issue that, you know, Justin and Steven can also talk about it, I'm sure, but, you know, the issue with PPP is, you know, we're a unique industry. I mean, we have 0% revenue. We have furloughed employees. You know, PPP has issues because we had to have, I think now it's 60%, 40% has to be spent on employees. Before it was 75-25, I think. That's just not, we don't have that capability as an industry. So yes, I mean, definitively they need to give us some legislation, and that's what we're working on. That's what we work every minute of every hour in NIVA for the most part, is trying to get that figured out.
I
mean, Justin, please jump in on that.
Yeah, it's just gonna keep getting more challenging as businesses open. Like the phase 2 businesses, the phase 3 businesses, there's going to be less focus and less incentive for government bodies to give relief as they see the economy starting to come back to life. You even saw it with the unemployment reports. What was it? 2 weeks? I don't know. A day feels like a month to me right now, but I think it was like a week ago where you know, there was it wasn't as bad as they thought that it was going to be, and therefore they might stop the pandemic unemployment insurance that's being given to those that are that $600 a month extra that's given to the employees that are furloughed right now. How about the music venue employees that won't be able to come back to work when all the other businesses are open in July? So, you know, these are the kind of things that we have to keep on the forefront of our legislators' minds. And, you know, the independent venue community and promoter community we have a powerful voice. When we send out letters, they're massive. Like our last campaign was over 500,000 letters to our representatives, and in the independent venues also, I think the silver lining is across both sides of the aisle, Democrats, Republicans. They seem generally to have the desire to see us through this, but you know what that actually translates in terms of like actual relief is still yet to be seen. And so, you know, we're standing by, but it's going to happen at the national level, and then also at the state and city level. And venues have, you know, all have to sort of come together and come up with as many different ways as possible to help pull us through this.
I mean, Steven, please.
One of the things we saw with the new Colossus Festival is that the current administration is really unfriendly to artists, and we have to wrestle we have many artists from Canada and the UK come to our festival. We have to wrestle with immigration, getting them all in. And I think a big step would be for everyone to vote in November and try to get an administration that cares about art and music and, is artist friendly. And yeah, that $600 going away that Justin mentioned is going to make things even more difficult, because the majority of people who come to shows are artists and musicians as it is, and are probably not going to be able to go back to work around the time that venues are reopening. So like the audience at these shows is going to be hurt by that $600 going away.
Yeah, I'll say one more thing. I mean, I was on the phone with Cory Booker's team today, talking about NIVA, and one point I was trying to make is that, look, I mean, for the greater good of society, our venues doors have been shut, and there was no argument for me that was the thing that had to happen to protect society. But in a way that is the same, what's different than that in eminent domain when someone takes your land and gives you money for it? In reality, they took our venues for the greater good of society, and now we need money to be able to survive.
What kind of number do you think that the government needs to give independent venues to survive? And I'm just curious on that, because when I look at companies like Live Nation, they didn't need to go to the government. They were able to do some bonds and give some, do some fancy stuff because they're, a public company, and raise money from Saudi Arabia and other places. Do you think that, like these venues need to do some like sort of private bond thing that like maybe like future tickets, like do some like kind of interesting financial model that can get them the liquidity they need to survive? Like I'm just really curious. I mean, like, John, are you guys seeing anything on the Bandsintown side of art of venues maybe, giving future tickets just to collect revenue? Like I'm kind of curious to.
There's so much that everything we're thinking of. I'm actually putting together an impact fund, via my platform Venue Pilot, where it's just that it's a way to give sort of cash advances to venues, offset by future ticket sales at very, very low interest rates to these venues as something. And yeah, but then there's also funds that the challenge a lot of the challenges that a lot of these funds the payments need to go to nonprofits. So since venues are for profit, it can be a little bit more challenging. But there's still ways for these to work. So there's funds that are trying to form in order to do this, and also raising private. I think that the part of the music industry that's successful right now, that's doing really well, like the streaming companies and the labels, and that they should help. They should be creating funds to help music venues. We're the ones incubating all their talent, so it would be nice to, I think it would be better for their business too if they would consider helping us sustain ourselves.
Yeah, I'll also say one more thing. I mean, look, the multinational companies here in the music industry side, they need us too. I mean, we are the touring market. They need our clubs, whether they want to admit it or not. They need our clubs, or else the entire touring industry goes down.
No, totally, and I definitely hear that. Obviously, huge concerns there financially. I mean, all we can hope is that Congress kind of sees this and allocate some funds, because I think you're right. It's awkwardly unfair. Retailers, and they have a little bit of advantage because they can open up. There's not as many things to kind of go through, and hurdles and hoops. So I think this is definitely true. But Natasha, please.
Sure. Yeah. So, we do have a final question that we wanted to ask before we jumped into Q&As, and it's really just centered around focusing on the streaming apps that we've been seeing, and kind of if you guys are focusing on any of the streaming spaces, What are you guys seeing as kind of the best route you're taking in streaming as a venue? And what kind of advice do you have for other indie venues out there to kind of maintain at least some semblance of, shows going on in the streaming space? We'll start with Justin.
I'm actually curious myself. I mean, there's so many new platforms that are sort of cropping up. And, I think looking for ways that really sort of make the experience feel like it's something special that's like a live show that's happening, that's connecting the viewer with the experience at the venue. And making sure that the technology works well and potentially something that can be monetized. So I still feel like the verdict's out, and there's just all these companies cropping up and trying to figure out what works. I don't know, but I'm very curious what other venue operators are doing.
We're using StreamYard for the new Colossus streams, and one of the things we love about it is that Brad, who left Paste, is interviewing all the bands. So you're getting something else with the session. You're getting some knowledge about the songs and when they were written, and you're getting to know the bands more. So we like StreamYard because it's multi-screen, and he can edit the show as it's going on.
That's awesome. That's what we're using right now. So I love that you guys are also using that, because it's, we've talked through a couple of different streaming platforms as well, and this seems to be the least glitchy one, but I'm always curious to hear what, anyone else is using.
Yeah, there's another a company. I can't speak for NIVA. I can't endorse it through NIVA, but for me, there's a company called Looped, Looped, Looped Live, and they are the one that I've trust the most at the moment, and they do something really cool. They do basically a virtual venue, and so they can both live stream, and you can sell GA tickets and VIP tickets, and the GA tickets gets you to the live stream, and the VIP tickets gets you to one-on-one virtual meet and greets.
Cool.
And they will you can take a photo. It's like a minute and a half. It's the app. It's very well done, very thought out. The team is smart. But again, who knows?
No, it's cool. I'm on their website right now. They seem very interesting.
Yeah.
And being able to offer that kind of stuff within that experience is nice, because I feel like everyone's been trying. YouTube's been trying to create solutions for monetizing their live streams and stuff like that, but creating more of a ticketed space where you get different levels of stuff, I feel like that is a really nice solution to allow for kind of, if you did want to do the interviews as more of a elite experience, you kind of have the choice to separate those things out. So that's really, really cool. Clay, you got anything for us?
Sorry, I was on mute. So we got a couple of questions in here. The first one is on copyright and live stream. We have a manager in here who's asking about, for venues, do you see copyright and music being a big barrier in the future to creating the hybrid physical and digital model, given the news that's been happening with Twitch and a lot of publishers asking to pull down content that is within the major label or major publishing system? John, maybe we could start with you, because you guys have been doing so many live streams. I'm curious to understand, are you guys concerned about the copyright around live streaming, and how you guys are thinking about that as a technology company?
Yeah, it's definitely challenging. We are working with Twitch. We have a partnership with them for the Bandsintown Live channel. For those not familiar with it, we're doing basically every day of the week, Monday through Friday. So every Monday is a set Monday, almost like its own sort of digital venue. And each day of the week is set accordingly. So that every Monday you get the same kind of genre of music, every Tuesday, etc. When we started looking at different platforms and creating a distribution strategy for our content, it became clear very quickly that there is no standardization of how copyright, how just rights management in general, how paying performance royalties out, how any of this is handled. Every platform seems to be sort of doing it their own way right now. So I definitely think that there will be a barrier of entry to navigating that space depending on how venues want to handle that. That said, I think that we actually had a call on this yesterday with some legal folks just to sort of talk through, do we have risks with certain genres, like with electronic music, versus other genres where there may be less of a risk. It seems that the larger aspect of the risk and the particularly like the DMCA takedowns you mentioned with Twitch, all come specifically to on the sync side. So with actually recorded music, it seems less of a concern on the and I should say recorded music and the VOD side, less on the live streaming side. So I don't know, from a copyright perspective, how big of a challenge it will be. I think it's more so just making sure that the artists are getting paid for the and just the rights holders in general are getting paid correctly, and then it's sort of above board from that landscape.
Yeah. Anybody else? Maybe Steven or Patrick or Justin.
I don't have much to add there, unfortunately.
Yeah, I don't either.
I'm not definitely far from an expert on it, but I understand the same thing, that the live streams is the kind of thing that you just need like the PRO protection from, like ASCAP, BMI, CSAC, GMRO. But if you record it and then want to do replays and have like some sort of archive, then it's like a whole nother can of worms. But that's as much as I understand. Like,
yeah,
no more depth than that.
So we got another question coming in here regarding Live Nation's leaked memo that came out that pretty much said that they're going to change artist deals. They have a couple of clauses in there that will reduce artist fees if canceled shows happen. The manager here is, I guess, asking, are there going to be differences in the type of deals that you guys are going to be doing with agents moving forward, and the way that you handle talent to kind of mitigate the upfront financial risks that you guys take on every time that you guys do a show? So maybe, either Justin, Patrick, or Steven, we can start with you guys, since I'm sure that you guys do thousands and thousands of deals with agents every day.
Well, as a manager, I read that, not as a talent buyer. And the 20% that they are cutting from the artist is usually what the artist could make. Sometimes it's less than that. They still have to pay their crew. They still have to pay for hotels. They still have to pay for transportation. So that it's hugely problematic to cut that 20%. As a venue booker, I will say that I would be less apt to take risks on larger guarantees with a very limited amount of income coming in.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. And you said we're making thousands of deals with agents. Not right now, we're not. But yeah, look, I read over what Live Nation put out. It's interesting stuff. I know they spoke a lot about festivals, and as well. Yes, deals are going to change on my end and across all of venues. And I think what our guarantees we're gonna switch to closer to door deals for a lot more stuff, and it just has to happen that way. And this industry we want both artists and venues to succeed, but it notoriously venues, I believe, take more risk than artists do at the moment, and we just got to make sure that we can survive.
Yeah, Justin.
Absolutely.
Please.
I think the most important thing is transparency, and I think for agents and artists and venues to be able to sort of share everything openly about what what the challenges are. We're all in this together at this, and I think that what will come out of that is positive change for the industry as a whole. And yeah, I think that, you know, that the deals are gonna have to look different, because the pot in which we're, you know, of money that we're able to work with has shrunk. So we have to figure out how to make it work for everyone involved. But I think what we want is something fair. No venue operator wants to screw over an artist. Like, that's not the point, you know, of having a different kind of deal or something like that.
Or else we wouldn't be doing
also, yeah, you know, the passion is the hearts are all in the same place, and it's just like, all right, but we still have to pay rent, so let's figure this out. And I think if it's a very transparent conversation, it'll just it will be positive. Versus putting out some sort of memo that I don't really know. You know, I read it too, but you know, Live Nation hasn't had a chance to respond to it, so I'm sure there's. I just don't know, but it just seems like the solution is to be able to do this kind of stuff just out and open with everyone when you're making these deals.
Yeah, and we got another question coming in here as well, and I think, John, you may be best to answer this. They're asking, how much more important do you see big data becoming in the decision-making of talent buying and routing a tour, given the level of risk to go on the road will likely increase post-COVID-19?
I would actually say that these guys are probably better than I mean, I you know, obviously work in a company that has a massive amount of data, and so we can, you know, certainly say with confidence from the Bandsintown perspective that you know, data has helped a lot of the industry with their decision making. You know, and in particular, we've seen through Bandsintown data. I mean, we work with a lot of the booking agents, both on the you know, larger side as well as on the many independent agents and agencies that are out there leveraging our data and our, you know, whether it's local trends to understand local trends or global trends to understand growth of artists, so that they can be you know, using us alongside other data that they're already gathering from the artist directly or from socials or from streaming to make those sorts of decisions. So I mean, I would resoundingly say yes, the data will be helpful in making decisions. But, you know, I'm sure you guys could speak much better than I into the actual process of booking and buying and you know, what else goes into it besides the data that helps these decisions to be done effectively.
Yeah, maybe, Steven, we could start with you.
You know, you want to curate a venue according to your musical taste and search for the music you love and book it. I mean, that's at the heart of all of this. We've been talking a lot about the financial side of it, and that part of it will continue. So, I moved from pianos to Lola and was able to book a lot more of the indie rock bands in the Bushwick scene, and I created this beautiful 3 months of music that we only got to see a month of, and I'm looking forward to starting over and rebooking every single band whose show didn't get to play at Lola at some point.
That's awesome. Yeah, well, so, you know, I think we're wrapping up at the end of this, and I want to thank you guys all so much for just being so transparent and honest. I think that is something we desperately need to continue doing as an industry, and just sharing our fears and our hopes and the things that we're seeing that are trying to help and you know, be active in those ways. But, you know, if I could get just like one last take from each one of you guys, what is your, you know, 3 potential predictions of where you see the industry in the next 6 to 12 months, whether that's changes, no changes, burning or not? Would love to start with Jon and go from there.
3. I mean, you know, I think it's going to be very difficult, but I do think that, as everyone else has said already, the industry needs to come together. It needs to be all sides of the industry. We are, through Bandsintown, working with NIVA to do all that we can as well, to spread the word, to make sure that any lobbying support, any support for funding, any of that can get distributed to the broadest community possible from a diehard concert fan perspective, which we have. So I mean, I think that's, look, there's going to be a lot of changes that have to be made, as everyone has said. I think it's hard to pinpoint the three biggest because they all seem pretty earth-shattering for many right now. So yeah, not an easy question.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Steven, what about you?
As I said at the beginning of this, we decided we're going to try live streams from inside the venue. And I feel like that's a positive step because I think we're all getting tired of seeing people's bedrooms behind them all the time. And then, I'm preparing a one sheet to reach out to some people to do these live streams. I'm going to start with friends of mine, and things come up. Like, for instance, how are these bands supposed to play a show when all the rehearsal spaces are closed? So the venue should become rehearsal spaces. The sound guy should be able to come in, 2 hours before sound check and set up the band and let them rehearse for a couple hours. Otherwise, the whole model of having shows, live stream from the venues isn't going to work. Nobody's rehearsed in 3 months. So for me, that was just a really positive thing to realize that we need to do. We're all going to have to sort of relearn what we do. I do hope that in a year from now, there'll be a vaccine, and that the live scene in New York City can start to be fully recovered. And that's optimism, obviously.
Yeah, great idea though with the using it as a rehearsal space. I mean, that's a great, really, really unique idea I haven't heard yet. But Patrick, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, can I combine both Steven and John's? I mean, look, I think nothing is going to, until we have a vaccine across the country, we're not going to see the live music industry and comedy industry back anywhere near. I, will say, I'll just say this: it's not a prediction. On the positive side, as far as NIVA goes, it's been a very gratifying, if not terrifying, thing to be part of. With promoters and venues that are so independent minded, and that's why they got to where they are now, is because they're independent, coming together to fight for this thing that means everything to us and our communities. If I can make one more plea, it's, I don't have any prediction. I can only say that if we don't get some sort of funding from Congress, we're dead as an industry. It'll change. We're resilient. Of course, things will change, but a lot of venues are going to be gone.
Absolutely. Justin?
Well, yeah, as freaked out as I am and as many other operators are, I think we're an industry of optimists. We wouldn't be doing what we do if we weren't putting on shows. And so I think I'm still optimistic that the solutions will present themselves, and we will, as a country and as music lovers of live music, come together and come up with a way to see us to the other side of this. And then, I think the silver lining is that it's an opportunity for a reset of the industry, for there to be more transparency between the artists, the fans, the venues, and other stakeholders in the independent space, in the just live music space in general, not just independent. Let me clarify. And also, diversity is something that is a problem within our industry, and I hope that coming out of all of this, that's something that we'll start seeing changes there too. Seeing more diverse panels, more diverse conferences, venue operators. So yeah, the silver lining might be that when we come out of this, if we do, we'll all be stronger and better.
Absolutely. One last thing for all of you guys. Where can people find you guys? Where can people find the companies that you guys own or organize for? We'll start with John. We'll go from there. I didn't want to make sure we didn't have that.
You can find me on LinkedIn. Company, you can go to bandsintown.com or the Bandsintown Concerts app.
Awesome. Steven?
We have a band called Zune from Hamilton, Ontario, performing at 5 o'clock tomorrow on the New Colossus Facebook page. Their album comes out tomorrow on Paperback Records. I wanted to give them a plug, and you can find me at that stream. And Lola's website is Lola NYC-live.com. And yeah, that's that.
Awesome. Go ahead.
Yeah, you can find, my venue is whiteeaglehallJC.com. NIVA is nivasos.org. And I'm happy to say that if you go to that site right now, you'll be able to click and see a letter to Congress that 800 artists signed and delivered about an hour ago, asking for congressional support of independent venues. Everyone from Lady Gaga and Billie Eilish and Billy Joel and Dave Grohl and Mavis Staples and a ton of people just signed.
Is there anything that you can promote that you guys are doing that the public can also be a part of helping with?
Sure.
You can do the posting on Instagram too, I think, right? We got some cool assets from you guys.
Yeah. SaveOurStages.com is our public facing. That letter is also there. But if you go to SaveOurStages.com right at the very beginning, you can send a letter to Congress. It takes 30 seconds to do, and it's super impactful for us in our fight right now.
Awesome.
Justin?
Yeah, and also thanks Patrick. He was the primary person who built the NIVA website when we first started in March. God, it feels much longer. But just a shout out to to that heavy lift and his helping with that. Yeah, and for the Poisson Rouge, or LPR for short, you can just go to lpr.com. We're in Greenwich Village, New York City, at the space that was the historic Village Gate, which is a lot of interesting past to it. I also have the venue management platform, if you want to call it that, called Venue Pilot, and that's venuepilot.co if you want to check that out. And yeah, easy to get a hold of, either via NIVA or LinkedIn or LPR or Venue Pilot. So you'll find me.
Awesome. Amazing.
All right. Well, guys, thank you so much for all of your time. Thank you for being so open. And, Patrick, Justin, just want to congratulate you on that letter. I think that's huge. Anybody that's watching, everybody on the panel, let's all write that letter to Congress, like Patrick was saying. It's so easy. And this is something that we can actionably do right now. So anybody that's watching, please write that letter. I want to thank you all again for your time. And hopefully we can have you guys back soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you.
Guys.
Thank you.
All
All right.
Whew.
Well, another episode has concluded. A lot of real stats there. I'll be honest with you. 90% of venues going bankrupt is just such a staggering number.
Yeah.
Like,
it's heartbreaking, truly.
when Patrick shared that, I texted you this, right? It's like, I'm like, oh my God. Like, it gave me chills to hear him really say that in the tone that he did, but he was being real, right? As it's interesting because you have a lot of people who are optimistic, and I get it. Hopefully, like a lot of economists are saying V-shaped recovery.
We can only hope. Yeah.
But I think what I've really got was that the music business may not have a V-shaped recovery, and it's and I'm really proud of Patrick and Justin and the whole NIVA team to have gotten that letter. I think that's going to be a big opportunity. So let's definitely, I think we should definitely put that link. We'll put in the YouTube link to make sure that everybody can send that letter to Congress.
Yeah, we need our government to step up right now and take care of everyone and all this the industry that everyone goes to whenever they're feeling good. So when we're not feeling so good, that industry needs to be taken care of as well. And I really, really hope something comes out of this. So yeah, anyone that can who has a computer, has a phone, has any way to get on the internet, do your part, submit the letter. If you see any other opportunities to connect in a way that can share this information, do that as well. We definitely want to see momentum in this. And this is an industry that we don't want to see falling apart. And it's been really hard to these last several months, just see it not get better sooner than we would like. So, we'll keep, sharing these live streams where we can, create opportunities where people can share their ideas. And hopefully you guys are taking something from this. You're, implementing these things in your own strategies in whatever part of the industry of entertainment you're at. But, we want to make sure that this maintains a resource for everyone. So, keep up with us. We're doing this weekly. Our next one is Tuesday. We had to, we did this as a reschedule from last week. So we'll be back to our regularly scheduled Tuesdays at 6 p.m. Eastern. And you can maintain, you can keep watching these on YouTube. You can keep keeping up with us on Instagram and, of course, on LinkedIn. Clay and his team manage an amazing newsletter for Fast Forward that is probably one of the best ways you can get a recap for these, as well as so much other good insight. So keep up with the newsletter as well. And, we're just trying to stay here and continue informing and helping where we can.
Yeah, and I'll say this too, and I think this is a big call out. If there are any bigger music companies, who are listening in, I think there's going to need to be a private sector solution. As much as I want the government to step in and do something, I don't see the Trump administration doing like as much as they need to cushion the business. So, I call on the private sector, and that's not just the big companies, right? Like that is your company. That's my company. That's, can we offer pro bono services to these venues who, need help? And I will say this as the owner of CAD, who has worked with so many artists. I've had artists at every one of these venues that we had on today. I've had one there, and I've worked with pretty much all of them outside of Justin for, talent buying, and I've come across them. And I'll say that a lot of the artists that I know would not be where they are without these independent venues whatsoever.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So I like I said, I just want to call on everybody, no matter what size you are. We can all do something to help, whether it's pro bono services, whether it's writing that letter to Congress, or educating your maybe non-music industry folk about the issues here, because everybody's going through issues right now. But I think this has gotten underplayed, in my opinion, to the amount of volatility this business has right now, and how much it really truly is hanging on by a thread. You heard Patrick say himself, like he was like, that study that we talked about today was fielded almost 2.5 months ago. Yeah. And we're now in month 3, which means that if the study's right, by August, 90% of venues will be going away.
God damn.
That's something to sink in. So, but I'm happy to at least let you guys all know, whoever's still tuning in, that we do have a independent venues versus COVID-19 part 3 that is coming up on June 30th. We have the founder of Mercury Lounge, We have a few other talent buyers and a really great live streaming app. So and I'm glad that we can continue this conversation because the more venues and tech leaders and in entrepreneurs that we can get on here, I hope the closer that we can get to finding some answers and some pieces to the puzzle. So,
Absolutely.
Natasha, where can they find us again?
You can find us on Instagram at Let's Fast Forward,
Cool.
which is also down here at the bottom. And then you can find us obviously on LinkedIn between both our pages for Austere and for CAD Management. And then, of course, YouTube, Let's Fast Forward. All the recap videos are on there. You can watch the entire panels for all of these. Like he said, this is our 8th one, I believe. So we're really, we've got a lot of good information and insights in all of those that we've been able to share and put out there. So keep up with us. We're excited and we're always happy to be here and sharing. And if you want to be featured in one of these, hit us up at what email, Clay?
They can always hit me up. It's Clay Durant at cadmusicmgmt.com. Yeah, just hit me up. We would love to have as many people as we can on here, shed some light. And like Natasha was saying, please follow our newsletter. I have given every resource that I personally have to make sure that the best information is out there. We have interviewed the CMO of PepsiCo. We have interviewed the CEO of Bandsintown. So many amazing leaders who are shedding light. And I think right now our goal is to just be an information hole so that people can, really find the right information to make the best decisions. So like I said, thank you so much for tuning in today. See you guys on Tuesday. And it's been a pleasure today.
Absolutely.
All right,
See you
catch
guys
you
then.
guys.